sometimes a game comes along and as soon as the previews are made available, it's exactly what you thought it was going to be going in. A whole swath of previews around Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League are now online from the likes of IGN, comicbook.com, VGC, Eurogamer, and they're all pretty negative. There's a few bits and pieces of some positive stuff in there as well. A very small amount of outlets were allowed to go along and play Suicide Squad. Sadly, we weren't one of them. But still, some people did get hands-on with the game, and the majority of the things that were detailed here are quite negative. A lot of the assumptions that were made about the game going in, the Fortnite-adjacent control scheme or control model, the physics that were in there, the way that it seemed like characters were moving, has been mentioned yet again in IGN's write-up. They note that there's actually a mission where you're saving a bus full of people in the sky, just like Fortnite. I will do some positives first, though, and then we'll run down some quotes or run down some stuff from the people who did get hands-on. The positives seem to entirely be in the character writing and the presentation of the stakes themselves. It seems like Rocksteady have absolutely gone with the idea of killing the Justice League, to the point where Destin Laguirre over on IGN notes that there's no way this stuff will actually stick. Like, the reality that you are taking out these, these superheroes in very, very gruesome ways and getting up to all sorts of different villainous things as well. The assumption, at least for my part, is that it's going to be some sort of multiversal resetting or whatever. We know that going forward, James Gunn has this overall vision for DC and the movies and the TV shows and potential anime, etc., all being this unified thing going forward, and how the hell that's all going to shake out. The only way I think that you can tie that together, and it's in the most tangential way, will be saying that it's all a different multiverse, that it links together that way. But at least the character writing here seems pretty strong. Apparently the game is very, very funny, very humorous. The way that the characters are written up is very distinct. AEW's own Samoa Joe is King Shark in this thing, which is awesome if you're a big Joe fan like myself. And I think that, from the character writing, that was always spot on across the Arkham series as well. And that is far and away the biggest takeaway positive, alongside the fact that they have capitalized on the idea of killing the Justice League. Onto the negatives, though, which is where we get around the idea of, the mission design, the game design in general being very live servicey to a fault. Multiple outlets mentioning that you are sort of going up against waves of enemies defending a point. You are shooting weak spots off larger creatures. It is that standard stuff that was very tired even in 2017, 2018 with the likes of Anthem, the early versions of Destiny. I mean, even Destiny 2 struggled here and there with making its missions more interesting. And it seems like just the reality of how long this thing's been in development. We're going into its 9th year at this point, which is crazy. They've kind of just brought that stuff across. The things that felt quite tired across the 2010s very much feel even more tired in 2024. A lot of comparisons to the Avengers in here as well, which was Square Enix's ill-fated game that's no longer even available at this point. That game did so poorly that it was pulled from sale. Just a horrible attempt at trying to live service the hell out of Marvel, 3-4 years ago now. And it very much didn't work. There was a lot of assumptions for Suicide Squad that it would play very similar to Avengers, i.e. you would have a smattering of different characters, but they would all largely play the same. There's the things mentioned in these write-ups as to how the game for Suicide Squad doesn't necessarily encourage you to work as a team. You're more playing solo. It ends up just feeling like you're trying to take everybody on by yourself. You're not really worrying about, doing that in a very tactile way or working with the person next to you to do it in a way that would actually make the game feel more identifiable. You end up getting another player's way. I think that's an interesting thing to point out, because you would hope, at least going in, that there would be some excuse to actually get some friends together and try and capitalize on the idea of playing as the Suicide Squad, and free up some different, have Captain Boomerang do something that frees up a weakness that means that King Shark can run in and do a melee finisher or something. It doesn't seem like that stuff is in here. Cade Ondor over at comicbook.com said, as Rocksteady staff stood in front of a room of press, they noted how it was hard to make people understand Kill the Justice League without letting them play hours of it. Cade says that if a game about playing DC's iconic villains on a mission to kill DC's greatest heroes isn't immediately understandable, is that really a good thing? You can see just how much they're chasing the Fortnite crowd, and there is that flip side to that coin, the idea about something that is more team-focused, that's more tactics-based, needing time to shine. The IGN note as well, saying that the more time they spent with the game, the more they were dropped into later chapters in the story. That's where it started to shine. They mentioned that when they started playing around about the chapter 3 onwards sequences, that they were allowed to actually make character builds, and that's when things started feeling a little bit more satisfying in regards to who they were playing as. But all outlets note that there's not that much differentiation in regards to how you're playing. Maybe there's a differentiation in regards to the voice acting and the idea that you're playing as King Shark, you're playing as Captain Boomerang or Harley. But still, it's quite a floaty feel overall. It's quite a Fortnite feel overall, which is the thing that Warner Brothers is chasing. So yeah, you've got IGN noting the character builds are where the game comes into its own, and Play Magazine did do an interview with Rocksteady's studio product director, Darius Sanderhain, who said, "We don't really think of our game as fitting with any particular label," which is an interesting way to approach this. You'll see a lot of coverage at the minute having Rocksteady say, look, it's not a live service game, don't worry about it. It's a unique thing. We're channeling the Arkham series, because this is an Arkham sequel. This is actually a sequel to the Arkham Knight, the game that came out in 2015, the Batman game, trying to make it make sense in that universe and trying to make it make sense from a gameplay standpoint, which is the hardest possible sell at this point, considering that the Batman series is a timing-based melee brawler, ostensibly, going up against a third-person Fortnite loot shooter. It doesn't really work. But I think just, how poisonous the live service term has become, Rocksteady's PR, the product director, etc., they're trying to get away from that, as their job absolutely would want them to do, and trying to sell you on this idea that this game is a more unique take on the live service genre, or it has all these new mechanics in it, this new general feel to gameplay that is inspired by Arkham. And, it's trying to remind you of those things, which I'll be amazed if you get an Arkham vibe when you actually get hands-on with it. Cade, back over on comicbook.com, does say that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League actively encourages movement. If you stand still, you'll almost certainly die. If you're playing as a character like Deadshot, who's equipped with a jetpack, you'll be flying around, hovering, or sliding. Mobility is a core pillar of the gameplay and makes it feel more akin to something like Sunset Overdrive, which took them by surprise. That's the only saving grace in here, is people mentioning the mobility, mentioning that you are jumping around various enemies and you're constantly on the move, and that's a big differentiator from Arkham, which, whatever, goes against the whole, hey, it's got the Arkham DNA in it type thing. But I think what a lot of Rocksteady's PR or the marketing is referencing is the character writing, is the sense of atmosphere and things like that. But again, it's hard to say that with much of a straight face when there's so much difference and distance between how Arkham Knight looks and how this thing looks. Back to IGN, Destin Laguirre, it's a pull quote in their article, but he does end the preview saying that he left the preview event less optimistic than when he went in, which is a pretty damning thing. I mentioned all the live service stuff before, and we also have Suicide Squad's game director, Axel Rigby, talking to Eurogamer. It's a live service game insofar as you need to be online to play it. Eurogamer's write-up then mentioned something that we did cover in the podcast and everything across the last few months, which is Rocksteady got out there and said, look, after Suicide Squad releases, we'll be putting a patch out there that removes the fact that you need to stay online. We're actually going to try and turn it into an offline game. And there's a few things in here, whether it be the Play Magazine interview or whether it be Eurogamer's write-up, saying that they want to build a community around the game and then try and make that work going forward. They mentioned releasing free content for the game. They never mentioned live service stuff. That's just off the table right now. And so there's lots of various definitions here as to what a live service game is and how you support that, how you foster a community. And the assumption, at least from their point, seems to be get the game out there. Hopefully it's received positively enough on the gameplay side. Give people who do buy it lots of free stuff. Make the game offline so you then don't necessarily have to do the live service stuff if you don't want to, and hopefully go from there. I mean, this is something that's been in development for, like I said, it's the 9th year this year. So trying to make that thing work is going to be a Herculean task. Something else that Rigby mentions to Eurogamer is that really what we wanted to make with this game was build a community around it, and we wanted people to not only feel like part of the Suicide Squad when they play, but also feel like part of the larger DC universe. That's why we have lots of social features that we're not quite ready to talk about. That reminds me of the James Gunn stuff that I mentioned at the start. I feel like there is this overall push to make all the DC stuff one big thing. And I would be amazed if there's actually some sort of brand Bible, some sort of, top-down rule set as to how this is all going to go. I totally get that the likes of James Gunn and Jeff Johns are pushing for this more unified front going forward. There are a lot of DC fans who are looking forward to that. Maybe it'll all come together, but I'll be amazed if a Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game is a meaningful part of that. Also, just to sort of round out the live service stuff, IGN notes that, we only just saw the cancellation of The Last of Us' online multiplayer mode. The Last of Us 2's factions multiplayer mode, whatever the hell that thing was going to be, it's no longer in production. And we also have Sony kind of walking back their various live service models that they were put into production, with Jim Ryan himself retiring this year. We're still getting Foam Stars, we're still getting Helldivers 2, and Concord is on PlayStation's upcoming highlight reel of what's in 2024. But I'll personally be amazed if they stick to they were trying to get like 15 live service games out and running across the next couple of years. I'll be amazed if that's the case. The last thing to throw in here is that Rocksteady themselves, I just wanted to note that the co-founders, Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker, did leave Rocksteady back in October 2022. And that was after 18 years. So all of this stuff, the push for what DC is trying to be going forward, the agency that James Gunn now has, the changing of the genre, let's say, from the Arkham stuff into the way that Suicide Squad looks to play, all of that, I imagine, as my lights refuse to work, all of that, I imagine, is going to be a hard thing to grapple with if you're the founder of a studio that made their name on the Arkham trilogy initially. I imagine it's very, very hard for them to accept that stuff on a pure game side. And the general conversation around Hill and Jamie Walker is that they've left to do even bigger DC projects overall. So maybe there's a way they can make that stuff work. But for me, it's not very encouraging if the the founders of the studio, who were fundamentally around for those games, then leave and go and do something else. So I guess we'll wait and see. But for now, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is largely exactly what you thought it was when you clicked on this video.